Good morning, everybody. How are you doing on this fine, beautiful Sunday morning? I've been wanting to make this video for a while now, probably a few months, to be honest with you. I actually have a snippet from about a week ago that I tried to start it, and it just, life had other plans for me. I want to talk about the snake business. For years, nothing's changed, but for years, there's always a lot of people trying to get into the hobby to turn it into a business, and there's always people leaving the hobby. Many people a month that I speak to are either coming or going. All right, so if you see me with keep switching backgrounds, it's because customers are pulled in or I had to go help somebody or whatever. But anyway, turning the hobby into a business. I do want to say, by far, this is the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my entire life. And you could probably find dozens of other people that will agree, maybe hundreds or thousands of other people that will agree. I do just want to give you some pointers if you do want to turn your snake hobby into a business. This is going to be probably a pretty long video. So if you have no interest in becoming a business, probably just shut it off because you might be bored with it. But anyway, like I said before, there's a lot of people every month that'll tell me about trying to, move their hobby to the next level and turning it into a business. And I want to compare that to the trades a little bit. This happens a lot in roofing companies and landscaping companies specifically. You get a good worker if you own a roofing business and you get a good worker that's just a really hard roofer. He knows what he's doing and he's just really good at his job. The guy's thinking, you know what, I could go from making $20 an hour to owning my own company and, be the CEO and make, so much more money, so they quit your company to go start their own. The problem is, when you move from any profession or hobby into a business, you go from doing 100% of what you love to maybe 5% of what you love and 95% of running the business. So when you run a business, there's things that do not happen in the hobby, and there's things that do not happen in whatever trade you're in, such as employees and hiring and firing and accounting and doing the payroll and the taxes. You got to make the government happy. Me particularly, I've kind of been an entrepreneur my whole life, even though I've never really done anything successfully. I've always wanted to own my own business, and any job I've ever had, I did want to pursue it into starting my own business. When I was a teenager, I worked for my uncle's newspaper, and we were printing his newspaper, and I wanted to own my own printing press and print for others. Now, during the time I worked for him, I did get to oversee a small group of people. Even though I was only 16 or 17, I was kind of, not management, but I was kind of a supervisor. I had to train other people on how to do their job. I couldn't hire and fire them. I couldn't give them a raise, but they did come to me for advice or if they needed help, and I was able to teach them a little bit. A lot of this and a lot of what we've accomplished here is through trial and error. When I first got into breeding rats and breeding feeders for our snakes, and I wanted to take it into a business, just based on math and averages, I thought that in my second year that we were going to do over $200,000 a year in sales, and I thought I was going to make a crap ton of money, and the numbers looked amazing. I'm like, if I hold back a certain percentage of rats and I use them for breeding, and I use this money for building more rat racks and this, that, and the other, it's just going to expand and it's going to skyrocket. I was very wrong on that. And it was only through trial and error that I was able to get to where we are now. And by the way, if you see me bouncing around, I mean, I'm a little ADHD, if you will. So I might bounce all over the place, but if you know me, you know me. So, but more specifically, like I said, I met a lot of people recently and over the years that want to turn their hobby into a business. But even more recently, we actually had an employee, which I'm not going to mention a name. This employee would do kind of some grimy things of trying, getting our customers' personal phone numbers and doing deals outside of work. As an example, if someone wanted to surrender an animal to us, they would speak to the employee, but instead of the employee asking us, hey, do you want to take this animal? This person would go and pick that animal up after work and make a buck on the side. That's dishonest. And I mean, it's flat out wrong. I did not fire that employee over that reason. There are many reasons I should have and could have fired the employee, but I did not. But you have to be honest, especially when it comes to this hobby. When I first got into the hobby, to me, it felt like a very close-knit group. All the people that were breeding and just had a few snakes or thousands of snakes, it felt like a really close-knit group, and everybody wanted to help each other. And when someone did something dirty, like, take a deposit for a snake or sell a snake and end up selling that same snake to 3 people, they would quickly get bashed on Facebook and on social media, and people would know or be warned not to do business with them. And in the same token, if you did good business and you treated people right, people are going to let their friends know. And they're, anytime you see something on Facebook, hey, where do I go for this, that, and the other, they're going to recommend you. Word of mouth is everything in this hobby. And although a lot has changed, I don't think that has. Maybe the hobby isn't as close-knit as it used to be because it has grown exponentially over the years. It's been a growing hobby for 30 years, but just in the last 6 or 7 years since I've gotten into it, it's really grown, I think, much faster than it has over the last 20 to 30 years. But the big thing is you have to be honest. You have to be an upstanding person and treat people right. In the very beginning, I would break my back to fix a mistake if I did something wrong, or say I sold someone a rat and it died on their way home. I'm sorry, come back, I'll give you another one, blah, blah, blah. And I'd fix, of course I still try to fix my mistakes. But now with, the hundreds and hundreds of customers we have, I don't have the time to give each person as much time as I did when I only had 4 people a week showing up. But we still, of course, try to correct any issues that we have. I don't know if I want to tell you the story or not, but I actually made a really big mistake last week. And, I called the lady and I gave her some options and we got it corrected, thankfully. But I felt really stupid for what happened. And it wasn't all on me. When you have employees, there's a lot of different hands and a lot of different heads at play, and things get lost, things get misplaced and disorganized, and sometimes you end up selling a snake that you had already sold or took a deposit from somebody else. That's actually the first time this has ever happened, but thankfully the customer is a really cool person. She's been coming here a long time, and we corrected it. I still feel really bad for her and for my mistake for what we did, but we corrected it, and some people won't correct their issues, and there's companies out there that'll sell a snake and they ship it and it shows up dead, and they will fight tooth and nail to not replace the snake or not send the person their money back, and you can't get anywhere when that happens. Do you know what I mean? You have to be upstanding, you have to treat your customers good, and you have to fix your mistakes as they happen. Now, most people in the reptile hobby basically start in their own home. They start in their basement or in their garage or in their living room, and they grow from there. And I think a very important part of this hobby is the people and the word of mouth, and that's how you grow and that's how you expand, is by treating your customers good. For example, if you go to a reptile show and you have a big name person there, like we'll say Brad McCarthy, you know, he is probably well known in the country, but even more well known in Pennsylvania, Northeast Ohio. I mean, he goes to Tinley, he goes down to Daytona. He's a big name in the hobby. And you have, you know, you that's been breeding for 1 year. You can have a pastel female on your table for, say, $75, and Brad might have it for $150. You think you're going to get the sale because you're half the price, but most people are still going to buy from the bigger name guy because they know that he's a stand-up guy. He's been treating people good for over 30 years. His name is out there. He's so well known, and they're going to pay the extra money to work with somebody they know and trust and all that stuff. Now, of course, you know, people that's been in the hobby a long time probably aren't going to buy a pastel, just a pastel, but you understand what I'm saying on that. They're going to go to who they know, and they're going to go to who they trust. And one big thing about me, I want everybody to succeed. A smart man learns from his mistakes, but a wise man will learn from other people's mistakes. You know what I mean? I want you to learn from my mistakes so that you don't run into the same issues down the line. You know, 2 years ago, we hired an accountant, someone I actually went to school with, because we had some issues with our accounting, because I've done it all myself basically from the beginning, and I use paper. You know, I print out registers and I handwrite everything, every sale, every expense, payroll, taxes, everything is on paper, old-fashioned, this, that, and the other. And the person I hired ended up putting all of our stuff into QuickBooks, and I worked with her for a few months, and it ended up costing us around $5,000. And when we actually had to fire her because she wasn't doing the work, and I took it to an actual professional. Everything was a mess. I mean, so much was wrong, and I had to spend so many hours fixing what she had inputted into QuickBooks, and it was such a huge mess, and I felt so taken advantage of, because, I mean, that's $5,000. That's a lot of money to a small business. But I had to accept it. There's nothing I can do. I mean, I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of money to get an attorney. Things like that are very difficult to prove, and if you don't have everything, you know, written down or in an email or on video explaining exactly what they're doing for you, it's very hard to fight it, you know. So there's a lot of mistakes that have happened, and even for breeding, you know, and I've been saying for years, for every 10 people that enter the hobby, probably 7 of them are going to drop out within that first 6 months to a year's time, because they will put so much money into the hobby that they don't have enough money to take care of their normal bills and their normal lives. Either that, or the work is just so much difficult. Not that it's difficult, but it's time consuming, and there's a lot at play. If I was a single man, which I am not, I can work 12, 14, 16-hour days, 7 days a week. I love working. I partially grew up on a pig farm for about 4 or 5 years when I was a teenager and a preteen. You know, I hated every moment of it back then, but it taught me work ethic, and I love working. And even now in this business, for my first about 4 years, I never took an income out of it. Every dollar that the business made went back into the business. Sometimes I even had to borrow money to put into the business. I had to work 2 or 3 part-time jobs. My wife worked full-time. You know, that's a lot of work to build the business to not take any profit. But I knew that's what it would take, and I knew that one day, and I keep telling my wife this still, one day we're going to get our money back, you know, and I know that it'll grow to a point where we can actually take a good income. Right now, we both get salary, and you would laugh at me if I actually told you what we made out of the business. All I can tell you is we make less than any employee we hire. But again, one day that's going to change, you know, and we don't need to get rich. We don't need a lot of money to survive. We're very blessed with being able to live a fairly minimalistic lifestyle, but you know, it's a lot of work. And over the last 6 years, tell you what, I think 3 years ago we went to visit my sister in North Carolina because she had moved there, and we left on Friday. We came back on Sunday morning. During the time that we were gone, we had 3 or 4 people that were handling the business and our house. So my mom stayed here because we had 3 dogs. So she was here to feed them and let them go outside to go to the bathroom. And we had people to clean the rat cages and help the customers that came out. Even having all those people here, when I came back, there were so many things that were wrong, like lights that hadn't gotten turned on. We actually had a couple of pigs at the time, and the entire first day that we were on the road to North Carolina, it had rained all day long, and where the pigs were got totally flooded. So the guy that was here helping us ended up having to release them out of their pen, and they had the whole carport. So by the time we made it back from North Carolina, I mean, there was mud all over the inside walls of the carport. There was things kind of broken and just thrown off. And I mean, it was a mess. When we got home, I think we got home early in the morning, maybe 1, 2, something like that. I slept for a few hours, and I got back up and had to fix the pig pen so I could contain them again, and then clean up their mess and get the lights on and make sure everything was okay, which actually took a few days to get it back to normal again. You know, and it's like we can't even take a vacation, let alone just a day off. You know, it's tough. And I think before that, one time we went for Christmas or Christmas Eve, we all went to my dad's house, who lives an hour away. And I had somebody here cleaning rodent cages the day we went to visit my dad. And we were only gone for maybe 5 or 6 hours, but we still had to have someone here because it's cold. We got to keep the temperatures right. I mean, we have multiple buildings and the house that we have to keep them at certain temperatures. When it comes to animals, they don't take a day off. They always need to eat. They got to be at the right temperatures. They got to drink, all that. So, you know, when we went, you know, on Christmas Eve to my dad's, that wasn't an issue because we had somebody here. But that means somebody else had to come here and work on Christmas Eve. Instead of doing whatever he could have done or should have done with his own family, he was here taking care of our animals so that we can go and have, you know, spend some Christmas time with our family. Fast forward a little bit, we went to the Tinley Reptile Show. I think it's been like 2 years now, 2 years ago. Same situation as North Carolina. We had 4 or 5 people working the farm, and we had like things that I typed up on what the temperatures needed to be in each building, and if it went under that temp, what they were supposed to do. If it went over that temperature, what they were supposed to do, how to turn the lights on, and this, that, and the other. And same situation. We were only gone for about 2 days, but when we came back, there were so many things that we had to fix and change because the people that were here, they don't know how I like to keep things. You know, all they have is text on paper of do this, do that, and the other, but they don't know. I might have missed some things, or they don't know how to do certain things because this ain't their house, this ain't their animals. They can only do what I've asked them to do. But the whole time I'm in Tinley, I'm checking my phone, and I can see that temperatures are going up and going down, and I'm texting, hey, can you please open the bug building door? Can you please turn the heater up? Can you please turn the heater down? I mean, it's a lot, and that's when I'm out trying to enjoy some time at a huge reptile show that I've never been to before. So there's no days off, even when we go somewhere. So if you want to take your hobby into a business, you have to understand that animals do not take time off. They still have to eat, they still have to drink. If you're breeding them, they need attention every single day, especially if you have hundreds or thousands of animals. You gotta realize the stamina that is involved with that. Realistically, I spoke to someone, I think it was about a week ago now, and I said, if I worked a normal 9-to-5 job, and I have been for years, and I never had this business, if I quit my job to come and own Big Sal's feeder farm without ever having any experience in the matter, I would have probably been bankrupt within a month. Because with all the work that is involved with feeding and cleaning and helping customers and the temperatures and all of that, for what I actually get paid, I'd quit in a month. I'd be like, you know what, I can't do this. This is much harder than I thought. But the problem is, a lot of people see us and all they see is the amount of customers that come in. They see the cash getting handed back and forth and the credit cards, and they see everything on the outside without realizing the depths of the work and the stress and being overwhelmed that's underneath. Kind of like the iceberg, you know what I mean? And the Titanic, they only seen the tip of the iceberg, not realizing what was underneath of it. There is so much that's involved, and you got to understand, you may love snakes, you may love bearded dragons or leopard geckos or whatever your thing is, you're not going to deal with them anymore. For the most part, you're not. You're going to be dealing with handling the payroll and the accounting and the customers and the angry customers and the website and your Morph Market account and all of that, and keeping track of inventory and make sure that, you know, nothing is being stolen, and that you got to make sure employees aren't working backdoor deals to try to rip you off or stealing money from you, which has happened. You know, there's a lot of business stuff that, you know, if you don't have any experience with it, you're going to find yourself totally overwhelmed and you're going to quit, you know, and that's what I don't want to see. I always tell people, you know, start slow, grow slow. You know, a crock pot meal always tastes better than a microwaved meal. You know, there's literally no such thing as overnight success. Even the businesses that you think are an overnight success, the owners have been working on that and building that for months and for years before that overnight success happened. So if you got into the position where you just hit the lottery, or someone just turns and hands you a whole bunch of money, you maybe had a family member pass away or something, and you get blessed with a whole bunch of money, and you just go out and buy a crap ton of animals, and you're like, now I'm a business, you do need to realize all the different depths of how hectic your life is now going to be. And I think if you go from 10 animals to 100 or 1,000 animals within a short time period, you're going to end up quitting very quickly, and you're going to end up losing a lot of money, because when you have to sell anything fast, you're going to have to sell it cheap, and you're going to sell it for a huge loss. That's what I don't like to see. And especially for the animals, they shouldn't have to go through that of bouncing from place to place that quick. I know snakes, you know, a lot of people, science will have you believe that they don't have emotions, and whether you believe that or not, they still shouldn't be bouncing around like that. You know what I mean? So just know how much is really there and how much it takes to go from having a hobby to having a full-fledged business in the hobby. And especially if you're working full-time jobs, or if you're part-time or full-time, you know, it is very difficult to go from working an 8, 10, or 12-hour day to coming home to take care of hundreds of animals. My personal collection, we've had 45 snakes in our personal collection on 3 different occasions. And all 3 times, it was only for a couple of months before I realized, hey, this is too much for me to handle. They're not getting cleaned like they're supposed to. They're not getting fed like they're supposed to. And I ended up selling off a great deal of them. Now our personal collection is only around a dozen reptiles, because I just can't handle it. When I'm out here working in the store or in the bug building for 12 or 14 hours a day, the last thing I want to do is come in the house at 8, 9 o'clock at night and clean 45 snakes and feed them and all that. It's really a lot of work. And I do not want to discourage you from living your dream or creating a business, because I'd love it for more people to do this, because I want to see the hobby grow. I just want you to know it's not easy. You got to know that it's not easy. There's a YouTuber I watch sometimes. Olympus Reptiles. Matter of fact, my friend Jamie is the one that turned me on to Olympus Reptiles. Although I don't watch a lot of his videos, I watched one of them just a few months ago, and he has pretty big following on YouTube. I mean, he gets thousands of views. I'm not sure exactly how many, and I'm not sure how much he makes on his YouTube views, because you could make money on it. But he has a really big collection of snakes. Now, he still works his full-time job, and I'm not sure if he's been in the hobby for 10 years, 5 years, 20 years. I'm not sure. I want to say I heard him say it at least 7 years. But you got to think, this man has a YouTube channel that pays him. He has probably 200 snakes at the very least, and he still has his full-time job because he doesn't have enough money to quit, and that's dependable income. You know what I'm saying? He still needs that money, and he'll tell you he films all of his own videos and edits them, or he has one person that helps him. But when it comes time to the snake, he doesn't have the money to hire a crew to take care of them around the clock. I'm not sure if he has any part-time people or not, but he still has a full-time job, and he does not have a crew taking care of his animals. So he's working full-time, and he's taking care of his animals full-time. That's 80 hours a week right there. Back to people I do know, and you'll know too if you go to reptile shows, especially in the last couple of years since COVID. There's been dozens and dozens of vendors and breeders that have been getting out of the hobby over the last couple of years. And I know one guy who, he's really big in the hobby, and, every time I talk to him, he's, does another show, and last year he was saying, that's the worst show I've ever done. That's the worst show I've ever done at this location, at that location. And then speaking to him this week, he did worse than the year before at that show. You know what I mean? It's tough. And if you go, in the snake hobby, if you go from making this much money and you're depending on this much money, and then your next show is here, and your next show is here, and your next show is here, it's like, how much can you put up with? And if you have a lifestyle where you have a car payment and a house payment, and you're borrowing money to put into your business, you have to make that up somehow. And if the snakes are not selling, you have to change it up. You got to figure out, do I need to start making and selling t-shirts? Do I have to do a YouTube channel? Do I have to get a second job or a third job? Which I did. I've had 3 part-time jobs at one point during this process of the last 6 years. Thankfully, I don't have to do that now, and thankfully my wife is able to stay home and work from home full-time now, but it's still not enough. I mean, we just hired a new guy a couple weeks ago, so now there's 4 of us that are basically working, roughly 30 hours plus every week. It's a lot, and you got to know that, it's more than just the hobby when it comes to business. And on the reverse side, you also got to know that they are animals. They deserve to be well cared for, well fed, and well cleaned. Because a lot of people that move from hobby to business, which irks the crap out of me, instead of, I'm going to feed my animal every week the way everyone knows they should be fed, as a business, you're now looking at it as, every time I feed this animal, that is an expense. And you start going from rats to mice. You start going from feeding them every 5 days as hatchling to every 10 or every 14 days, because it's an expense. If you're producing your own snakes, you do have a lot bigger of a margin to work with and feed them more without losing money. But if you're buying and selling snakes, if you only have a small margin of profit on that, if you feed that snake too much, or if you have that snake too long, you're going to lose money on the sale. And you can't lose money and still have a business at the same time. But those snakes deserve better. You know what I mean? You can never look at this as just a business. I don't care what hobby or what business you have. If it involves animals, you need to take care of them to the best of your ability and what they're expected to get. You know what I mean? All of our ball pythons in the store, eat every 7 days or every 5 days. If they're a very small hatchling, if they're, say it's under 100 grams, I'm feeding that animal every 5 days because that's how I feed my personal animals. If it's an adult, you know, and they don't eat as much, you can back it up to every 10 or 14 days. But to go 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks because you don't want to lose money on the sale is wrong on so many levels. And unfortunately, people do that. And I've said that in a video before. If you look on Morph Market and you see a snake that was listed 14 months ago that's only 125 grams, they are maintenance feeding that snake. That means they're trying to save money by feeding that as little as possible because that's expenses, that's overhead. And they need to maximize their profits. And that's the only way to do so is by feeding them less. That is wrong on so many levels if you ask me. My own personal snakes, if I hatch a snake, if I hatch a snake and I'm keeping it for a grow out in a year's time, that snake is usually 800 to 1200 grams for a ball python. To me, that's normal. It's not fat by any means. I literally feed sometimes only 5 to 7% of their body weight because I do smaller meals and more frequent feedings. I think they grow better that way. When you give them a big rat or a big meal every time, it seems like the majority of that just comes out in the poop because their body can only absorb so much per feeding, just like us, you know. There's a lot to consider and there's a lot to do, and I just want you to be aware of that if you are going to be in this hobby for the long haul, or if you're going to take your hobby and turn it into a business. You need to know that. And even if you do have a ton of money, money does not buy your customers. Like people say, money don't buy happiness. If you're in an area where, you know, you live next to Brian Barczyk's, you know, Reptarium, and people know him and he's well established and he has 30,000 snakes and 30,000 animals, and you have $1 million to invest in your own store and you set it up a block away from him, how are you going to get the customers to come to you when they have been going to him for so many years? You know what I mean? Of course, there's going to be customers that had a bad experience with him, or they might come to you because it's a new store and they want to see how it's going. But you have to build your customer base by dealing with people and growing slowly by slowly. Word of mouth goes a long way, but it cannot take you from nothing to enough to pay your bills in a matter of a couple of months. That takes years of building to get to that level. The last time I checked, I think we had like 1,120 local customers in our computer. It wasn't like that last year. It wasn't like that 2 years ago, you know. At the second year of our business, I think we only did maybe 100 or a couple hundred sales a month. I actually remember one time, and this is after a year into the business I created, we got a flat tire on my wife's vehicle, and it was the only vehicle we had, and to get a used tire was going to cost us, I want to say it was like $35. I didn't have the money to go buy a used tire. It literally sat in the driveway for a couple of days until enough sales came in that I could go and buy a tire for that car. It's tough, you know, and it's tough to build up to the level to where you can sustain your business without having another job, or without, you know, before you're able to quit your job. There's a lot into it. And you've seen the part where I was out there eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches as I'm fixing a flood and setting rat traps at the same time. I'm sure most of you already know that I'm a hillbilly, but come on now. 2 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and 2 rat traps. Doing too much. Truth be told though, sometimes that's what I gotta do. Sometimes you don't get a break. Sometimes you can't take 5 minutes to eat because, as in today's case, I have a flood. I had to fix 5 chewed water lines, and I had to get water filled in this bucket over there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rat racks had no water. Plus 2 mouse drawers were flooded because of a loose rat. More than likely, it's only 1 rat, but They need to drink. It's a hot day. Yes, we do have air conditioners running in here, but again, sometimes I can't take a break working like this. You just got to eat on the move. That's what I'm going to do. You know, a lot of days I go by, I don't eat throughout the entire day. You know, 4 or 5 o'clock, I might sneak a snack out of the house. Sometimes there's people here that want to talk to me. Yesterday, for example, there was a guy here for probably an hour and a half. All he wanted to do was talk to me, and I had no time to talk to him because there was, you know, 12 or 15 people in the store, and I had to go get some crickets, I had to get them rats, I had to do this, do that, and the other. I'm running around like a chicken with my head cut off, and my wife was running the store while that happened. It's tough, you know, and if you ask Mike, MCG Reptiles, he's been here for many years, you know. We met, I was in the hobby maybe only a year and a half when me and him met. We only met like one time and then didn't talk for another year. Then we became great friends. Now we run a reptile show together. He has seen me to the point where I'm like in tears because I'm just so overwhelmed with how much we have to do. And I was overwhelmed that I got ripped off by the accountant, or I received a letter in the mail saying I owed the government $33,000 because I didn't understand that once I got my vendor's license, I had to log into a Ohio Business Gateway and claim all the sales we made every month. I didn't even know how to set up an account because the government makes it so difficult to use their websites. Like, what do you do when you get a letter in the mail, certified letter, actually 3 of them at the same time, saying you owe $33,000 when you got $400 in your bank account? Like, what do? You know what I mean? It's things like that is like, I don't know, and you think your entire world is crumbling in the moment. You know, you have to sometimes take a few breaths and take a few days to really think about it. Thankfully, in that situation, we only ended up owing like $1,200, but I had to hire somebody to figure it out and to lead me on the right path, because I love snakes, I love the rats and the roaches and doing the business. I don't know crap when it comes to taxes. I don't know crap when it comes to accounting. That was a hard lesson to learn. You know what I mean? And I can't tell you how many times I thought I was going to have a heart attack because I was just so overwhelmed that what's going on? You know what I mean? When I tell you Mike has seen me in tears, he's seen me in tears. He's the one that was here Christmas Eve so that I can actually go spend time with my dad and enjoy a little bit of Christmas. And like I said, if I was a single man, no issue. I'll work seven days a week, 14 hours a day. But the fact is, I'm not a single dad or a single man. I have a wife, and now I have 2 kids that want my time and want my attention. You know what I mean? You know how hard it is to work all day long, and every time your son's trying to talk to you, you're like, hey, I'm busy. Then when I come in for dinner at 9 o'clock at night, we'll talk for 5 minutes as I scarf my dinner while doing bookkeeping at the exact same time, and still, Dad, is this important? Give me just a few more minutes. Give me just a few more minutes. You know how much of a piece of shit I feel like on those days, and I have to take a minute and say, hold on. Jimmy, come back over here. What do you want to talk about? Because it's just like, I'm so focused on the business. That's not me being greedy. That's not me worrying about money or trying to get rich. That's me just trying to keep up with the daily ins and outs of running a business. Do you know what I mean? And I know a lot of people, especially in my family, hate the fact that I work the hours that I do work. My wife hates the fact that I work the hours that I do work. And we make it up sometimes. We go to the water park, or we'll go do this. We'll, Canfield Fair or Trumbull County Fair. We'll do things as a family. We'll go out to dinner and have a good dinner. And we have a rule, we don't use phones at dinner time. When we eat, we eat together. We don't always eat at a dinner table, but we eat together. And, but it's tough, when a lot of people say when you're on your deathbed, all the work doesn't matter anymore. You're going to regret not spending time with your kids and not spending time with your family. And now I've been doing this for 6 years, and my son went from a baby to he's about to turn 11 years old in less than 2 months. And it's like, where does the time go? I've been so focused on trying to please the customers and trying to feed and clean the rats and the roaches and this, that, and the other. I'm more or less missing out on his childhood. It sucks. It's tough to do that. Thankfully speaking, I do have more time available now than I used to, and I do try to make it a point to spend more time with him, especially once I'm in the house for the night. Problem is, sometimes I don't go in the house for the night until 9 o'clock. So we ain't got much time to spend together. But the beauty of it is he is homeschooled, and we're always together. You know, we both parents work at home, and he's homeschooled, and he helps, and he enjoys helping most of the time. A lot of times he doesn't, but we're all still together, even though it's not always just sitting here playing ball in the yard. It usually revolves one way or another around work. And I know it's tough for him too. It was tough for me growing up on the pig farm. Like I said, I hated every minute of it, and it took me a few years before I really appreciated the work ethic that my uncle instilled in me, and my other uncle at the newspaper. I mean, they spoke so much into me through work and through teaching me how to work, that now I have the stamina that I was able to build this business to where I didn't even make an income for 4 years, you know. And now here we are, I think going into our 7th year, and I'm still working seven days a week, and I'm still making crap. But it's getting better, you know what I mean? And I know it's getting better, and we are able to take more from the business than we used to, other than just our paychecks. But it's still a lot of work, and no matter, you know, I could win the lottery tomorrow, and I will still need to work here 7 days a week, because, you know, if I'm a millionaire, that doesn't feed the rats. I have to pay someone else to do it, but I can't just pay them to do it. I got to teach them to do it. That's hard work, you know. I've been trying to teach people in the bug building for over 2 years now. Most people don't last a week in there, you know, and I blame myself for most of it, because I don't always have the patience to teach somebody. And it's hard when everything you know is in your head, but nothing is on paper or on a video to teach them. You know what I mean? Plus being ADHD and always bouncing from subject to subject, it's hard for me to teach somebody what's in my brain and expect them to know it quickly. You know what I mean? And if it's not quickly, if it's 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks into training and they're not to a certain point, that means I'm losing money on them, and I can't keep them long, because in a business you can't continue to lose money and still survive. But with that, I'm going to shut this off for now, and we'll wrap this up later. I'll talk to y'all soon. Hey, so there's one thing I do want to add to this video. One, I do know that everybody is different. I know that, you know, you might be getting into breeding bearded dragons or leopard geckos or ball pythons or retics or whatever it is. You might have a different amount of starting money than I had. You might have a different, you know, a closer family or people that are more willing to help you. We're all different, you know, nobody's the same, and no two businesses are the same, let alone two people are the same. But I did want to share with you this is just one of dozens of these stories that I've personally dealt with. There is a guy who is local. About 2 years ago, give or take, he just entered the hobby. And this particular person, he owns his own business doing something besides reptiles. But he has the money, he has some extra money. But when he got into this hobby, he's seen what a lot of other people see, and that is, you know, the prices for snakes on Morph Market. He sees the videos from, you know, Brian Barczyk and Nerd and all those other places that have many thousands of snakes and have facilities, you know, these giant immaculate breeding facilities, and that's what he wanted to do. So within a very short time period, I'm talking within 3 to 6 months, this guy probably put between $30,000 and $50,000 in on buying snakes, buying good quality snake racks and incubators, rat racks and racks. I personally sold him enough rats to breed, to supply his own food. 3 different times over a few months, he actually had a mass die-off with his rats. All 3 were mistakes that he made and he knew about, but, you know, the rats had to be replaced, you know, and a couple of times I was able to sell him enough rats to replace them, but most of the time I couldn't sell him what he needed because he just wanted high numbers, you know, 70 or 80 breeders, or bigger rats that he could start breeding with. But anyway, because he works full-time in his own company, he actually paid a neighbor to clean the rats, feed the snakes, maybe pair the snakes, and do all that. The guy had t-shirts and stickers made, and, you know, he was trying to build himself up and make a name for himself in the hobby. He did produce a few clutches. I don't know how many, but I'd like to say maybe around 15 or 20 clutches, maybe more, maybe less, in his first year. So he goes to the reptile shows, and I think the first show he went to, he did stay there all day, sold a couple snakes, did okay. And then the next show he went to, he ended up selling all of his snakes to one vendor or a couple of vendors for a huge discount so that he could go home because he just didn't want to sit there all day. Fast forward just a few months, and he ended up selling off all of his snakes, all of his snake racks and everything like that. And he was in and out of the hobby in under probably 18 months. Now, that is a guy who owns and runs his own business. He knows how to do the accounting and all that stuff that I tell you you're going to have to learn when it comes to owning a business. He knows all of that. But with the time and money that he spent to breed the rodents and breed the snakes and all of that, he quickly learned that it just was not profitable, or it wasn't profitable as quickly as he wanted it to be profitable. He needed to get back to his main business, and he ended up probably losing a lot of money when he sold his snakes and reptiles. And like I said, this is a guy that has a lot of money, and this guy is very smart. He's a good friend of mine. I rarely talk to him anymore, but, you know, we're definitely on good terms is what I'm saying. But within 18 months, you know, he built up a business with everything you could think of. I mean, like I said, t-shirts, stickers, business cards, all of that. And he was out, you know, in just 1 year, give or take, because he's just like, you know, it doesn't take off like you want it to. And besides that, you know, a lot of people will see the snakes that are available on Morph Market and say, you know, if I could just produce this, that snake is worth $2,000. If I produce a whole clutch of them, you know, I could make $10,000 in one clutch and blah, blah, blah. However, even if you produce them, you still have to find people to buy them. And if you can't find a buyer, you're going to have to feed them and take care of them until they sell. Or if they never sell, you're going to have to remain taking care of them. You can't just, you know, they don't automatically sell once they're produced. And if you look on Morph Market right now, there is probably over 70,000 ball pythons available that are not selling. I do not want to discourage you. If that's your passion and that's what you want to do, by all means, this hobby should grow, and we need more breeders and we need future breeders to grow this awesome hobby. But if you only do it for a business sense, you got to understand that it's not going to be as easy as you think it is. It takes a lot of work and a lot of time. But with that, I'm out. Have a beautiful day.